The village of Akanba was known throughout the western savannah for its wealth, trade, and strange superstitions. It was a village where old gods were still feared and the whispers of ancestors hung thick in the humid air. Though modernization had brought new roads and cell towers, many still sought the guidance of seers and oracles before planting their seeds or marrying their daughters. On this particular afternoon, as the sun blazed like a hammer against the earth, a hush fell over the central market. For through the northern path, wrapped in the fragrance of burning herbs and distant drumming, Kofi the prophet appeared. Kofi was a man of indeterminate age. Some said he was 90, others said he had never aged. His skin was dark as the earth after rain, his eyes pale like river stones. He always walked barefoot, never touching nettle, never eating meat. His staff, carved with ancient runes, tapped against the ground as though speaking with the spirits. Vendors fell silent. Children hid behind their mothers. Even the goats stopped chewing. He paused in the center of the square, beneath the massive baobab tree that stood like an ancient king over the village. His head tilted as if listening to voices no one else could hear. Suddenly, a sleek black Mercedes rumbled into view, shining like oil under the sun. Its doors opened automatically, and out stepped Chief Amadu Okoye, the wealthiest man for miles. He was a man who had conquered poverty with his bare hands, building businesses in palm oil, cocoa, gold mining, and real estate. His fortune had shielded him from drought, disease, and even politics. His name commanded respect, but as his designer shoes crunched on the gravel, Kofi lifted his staff and pointed it directly at him. "You will die tomorrow." The words echoed like a drumbeat. The villagers gasped. Chief Amadu froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. His laughter was rich like rolling thunder. "Old man, you insult me in public? Ha! I have dined with governors and presidents. I fly across oceans in hours. Do you think death can catch me so easily?" Kofi said nothing more. He turned and began to walk away, vanishing into the thick foliage of the Oyo Forest. The leaves swallowed him whole. Chief Amadu waved his hand dismissively. "Fools cling to their superstitions. I, however, have money." But in that silent crowd, many crossed themselves, whispered prayers, and touched their protective amulets. They knew better than to mock fate. That evening, Chief Amadu returned to his estate, a sprawling mansion on a hill overlooking the entire village. From his marble balcony, one could see the distant mountains of Okomfo, where it was said ancient gods once dwelled. Determined to mock the prophet's warning, Amadu threw the grandest party of his life. Fine wines from South Africa were poured into crystal goblets. Rare animals roasted on silver spits. Musicians from Lagos performed with electrifying energy. Dancers twirled like flames around ceremonial fires. The finest fabrics from Europe and the Middle East adorned his guests. He raised his glass high before the gathering of officials, ministers, businessmen, and celebrities. "Let us toast," he bellowed, "to life, to wealth, to tomorrow." Laughter erupted, but deep in the shadows of the great compound, servants whispered, old women exchanged worried glances. The village elders stood rigid under their agbadas, watching the horizon, for as the night deepened, the sky darkened unnaturally. A dense fog crept in from the Oyo Forest. The winds shifted, cold and sharp like unseen blades. At midnight, the dogs began howling in unison. "Master, something is wrong," whispered Kola, his loyal bodyguard. "Nonsense! You're all children frightened by fairy tales," Amadu scoffed, though his hands trembled slightly. Then came the knocking. 3 deliberate knocks at the front. Gate. Knock. Knock. The guards flung open the gates. No one was there, only a cold breeze that whispered through the mansion like an invisible snake. The festivities continued. Adanis grew thick like smoke. The guests started to leave. Musicians packed their drums quietly. By dawn, Chief Amadu sat alone, staring into the emptiness of his massive banquet hall. With the rising sun came strange omens. The sky remained pale and sickly. The birds that normally sang at dawn were silent. The village's sacred well bubbled as if disturbed from below. Cows refused to leave their pens. and Chief Amadu's private jet, scheduled to fly him to Abuja that morning, mysteriously malfunctioned. The pilots swore the instruments were functioning, yet the engines would not start. Worse still, all his cell phones, computers, and satellite phones went dead. His business network across the country went completely dark. Fear finally crept into Amadu's chest. He summoned the village's most renowned diviner, Mama Abba, a woman whose ancestors had served the spirits for over 300 years. Mama Abba arrived, wrapped in crimson and white cloth, carrying her ancient calabash covered in cowrie shells. She sat cross-legged, lit incense, and chanted softly as the shells rattled inside. When she cast the cowries and studied them, her face turned pale. "You are marked," she whispered. "You walk with death beside you." Amadu's lips quivered. "But there must be something, some ritual, some payment." Mama Abba looked at him sadly. "It is not me who can save you. You mocked the voice of the forest. Only the forest can answer you now." Desperate, Amadu gathered his courage and resolved to find Kofi the prophet. The forest of Oyo, however, was not a place one entered lightly. It was known as the domain of the silent ancestors, a place where travelers heard whispers of long-dead kings, where paths shifted under one's feet, and where no technology dared to function. Nevertheless, Amadu, dressed in plain cloth, removed his gold jewelry and carried only a flask of water, a machete, and the small amulet his late mother had given him as a child. As he crossed into the woods, a heavy mist engulfed him. The air was thick and wet, alive with whispers. Shadows darted at the edges of his vision. The trees themselves seemed to lean inward, watching. Hours passed, or was it days? Time unraveled in the sacred woods. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a clearing. There, sitting by a small fire, was Kofi. The old prophet looked up, unsurprised. "You came?" Amadu collapsed to his knees. "Please." "I mocked you. I mocked fate. I beg you, tell me how to escape this curse." Kofi studied him with calm eyes. "You carry a sickness worse than death, Amadu. Pride, greed, fear of being poor again. You built walls with your wealth, shutting out those who needed you most." Amadu wept. "I was that starving child once. I swore never to return to hunger. And in doing so, you starved others," Kofi said softly. "Now, the ancestors have come for their due." Kofi stood and gestured for Amadu to follow him deeper into the forest. They arrived at a circle of ancient stones. The air grew colder. 3 spirits emerged from the darkness: the one without eyes, the child of echoes, and the woman who never died. Each radiated power older than the mountains themselves. The one without eyes spoke first, its voice like grinding stone. "When you were poor, you dreamed of power. But once you held it, what did you do with it?" Amadu whispered. "I hoarded it. I feared losing it." The child of echoes sang softly. "The cries of your people echoed outside your gates. What did you hear?" Amadu bowed his head. "Nothing. I closed my ears." The woman who never died floated closer, her voice a whisper of wind. "What will you leave behind?" Amadu's voice cracked. "Everything, if only I may live." The spirits conferred in silence. Then the woman who never died spoke again. "The ancestors are merciful, but only if you become the opposite of what you have been. You will live, but you must surrender every coin, every land, every symbol of your wealth. You will become poor again, but you will restore balance to the land." Kofi handed him a small gourd. "Drink this." Amadu drank. The liquid burned like fire but settled. Like cool rain, the spirits faded back into the mist. Amadu returned to the village a changed man. His body was weak, his face hollow, but his eyes clearer than ever before. News spread fast. His offshore accounts vanished overnight. His businesses collapsed. His properties were repossessed. His gold and jewels disappeared. Some say the spirits themselves took them, but instead of wailing, Amadu opened the gates of his mansion and welcomed the sick and hungry inside. He sold what little he had, left to build free clinics and schools. The once mighty gates of his compound were torn down, replaced with gardens of yam maize and cassava. Children who once begged outside his gates now learned to read and farm under his guidance. the elders who once whispered behind closed doors now praised him in public. As the months passed, rain returned to the parched fields. The well filled with sweet water again, the animals thrived. The market bloomed with life, the forest no longer whispered threats. The wains grew warm. Years passed. Amadu grew old, his back bent but his smile constant. He no longer feared poverty, for he had found wealth in service. When Kofi passed away, the entire village mourned. Amadu himself carried the old prophet's body through the forest, burying him beneath the sacred Obab. One day, under that same tree, Amadu felt the cold fingers of death touch him at last. But unlike the night he was warned, there was no fear, only peace. As his final breath left him, the villagers sang songs of his redemption. The forest remained silent. The ancestors were satisfied. The millionaire had died, but the man had lived.